r/Askreddit by Reddit tells. People who are/have been homeless. What was the first night without a home like, and how did you adapt to your new situation? I was about 9 years old, and my mom said we were going on a camping trip. I didn't really suspect anything, as it was summertime, and we went camping a lot when I was younger. Although I did wonder why we were packing so much stuff. After a few weeks of camping, I started to complain, but my mom kept insisting that it was good for us to get in touch with nature, etc. Then school started, and we were still camping. And we kept camping for another 6 months. When we finally got a house, my mom cried with joy, and we don't camp anymore. I was 13 when my parents kicked me out and told me they no longer wanted anything to do with me. I was terrified to visit a shelter because I'd known some foster kids and the whole system scared me, plus I wanted to continue going to the same school. Didn't want to lose my friends too. The scariest part at that age was really finding out what I was hoping to eat. There had been a dilapidated trailer just minutes down the road from my dad's place, so I stayed in that. I don't think it all really hit me until I had to choose one night between food and blankets because the temperature was expected to drop down to the mid-30s and I had only had one somewhat thin blanket at that point. The next day, I put on my best attire, which was nothing impressive, and asked for a job at Long John Silver's. I lied and told them I was 15 and I worked 5 days a week rushing over after school. I ate more unhealthy than I have since to save money for some form of shelter, which came in the form of a 91 Toyota Camry that I purchased out of the thrifty nickel for $300. I loved that clunker, plus heating myself was much easier. From there it was mostly uphill. Found an older lady willing to rent me her garage without any sort of credit check. Took a couch off the side of the road to sleep on. I even had internet in there where I mostly read scary stories all night. I wish video streaming services were really a thing back then, and I just kinda learned to roll with the punches. My childhood wasn't normal. It was downright terrifying a good chunk of the time, but it is what made me who I'm today. I was homeless for a couple of months a year or two ago. I had a car and a low-paying job, so I lived in the woods in a tent for a bit. The first night was miserable. I ended up sleeping really uncomfortably in the passenger seat of my car, and it was a really cold night. After that I got a tent and slept on an old climbing pad I had. The first night was hell, but the next several weeks were actually not so bad. I had a spot in the woods where I was well hidden and would cook over a fire. I really didn't have it that bad, but it gave me quite a bit of sympathy for people who really do end up on the streets in a much more desperate situation. It is not easy. I was only homeless for about 6 weeks at 36 years of age. After several years of depression and anxiety slowly eroding my resources, relationships and general will to try anymore, I ended up having a final blowout with my GF, who reasonably couldn't handle me anymore. I started sleeping at work, which wasn't even a full-time job. The delicacy involved in not getting caught and the freedom from the extremely unhealthy state my relationship had been in kept my mind away from the absolute, abject terror that was hiding beneath the surface. The scary part of homelessness for me was the growing sense that if I fell any further I'd probably never get back up. It takes resources to be clean, fed and rested, and if you aren't those things it's very hard to get resources, let alone find the will to try. But that first night was all tridge, all focused on being sure the second night wasn't going to be on the street. I pulled it off for 6 weeks, and that time actually saved my life. I was away from conflict, intimately connected to how dire my circumstances had become, forced into a very regular schedule. Routine is really good for me, but nigh impossible in a depressive state, and, without bills, was able to save enough for damaged deposit and rent. I still struggle with depression in a pretty serious way, but the animal terror of having nowhere and no one really seared itself into me. A better motivation would be the future I want than the future I fear, but as it stands I at least have a motivator strong enough to escape the incredible gravity of mental illness. Sleeping in my car wasn't that bad. It was summer, so it was pretty warm, which was my biggest issue. Showered in the gym and spent most of my day at the library before going to work. For the first few nights it wasn't bad. However, one night police found me sleeping in my car and escorted me to the local homeless shelter, which was one of the most terrifying nights of my life. Since I'm lying there in a top bunk when a huge argument breaks out because one guy breaks out some meth, wouldn't share it with a second, then a third got pissed and started screaming at them to be quiet because he needed to sleep. Edit. Since this is coming up a lot, people keep asking how it was legal that the police escorted me to the shelter. I don't know the legality of the issue. What I can say is that I was woken up by a knock on my window to see 4 cops. To cop cars. They were shining those super bright flashlights through my window at me, and I didn't even think of arguing with them. When you're a teenager, it seems kind of cool to sleep in the car, on the couch or floor of a friend or acquaintance, or for your dad to scam a rented apartment for a month or 2 without paying for it. Moving around every few months carrying everything that you can in an old Honda Civic seems like an adventure. We once moved a couch across town in it. We must have looked like a couple of idiots. Once, after a few months of staying in a place where we had no furniture, were sleeping on the floor, the carpet of which was so flea infested that you could literally see the fleas hopping around. The landlord got so frustrated with us basically squatting in his property, my dad promised to pay and never did, that he removed the front door. So we went out to scam some food from somewhere and came back to find no front door, which in retrospect is a pretty awesome way to get someone out of your property. One of the ways we scammed food would be to go to the breakfast buffet of a fancy hotel, tell the server that we had a room there, eat a ton of food and just walk out. This was also kind of fun, but looking back it is a kind of fucked up way for a dad to treat his teenage kid. I was kicked out by my mother at 16 and spent 2 months homeless before the local authority placed me in foster care. I think what hit me first was how my own mother could make one of her own children homeless. I felt like the least favorite of her children. It all came out of nowhere. I racked my brain 4 years after, trying to think of what I might have done in particular. Also, the crippling loneliness you feel when you are trying to get hold of people to ask for a place to sleep for the night. I could not feel more alone in the world when someone would either not answer my message or tell me they were busy. I'm pretty sure I camped out in the park that night. Didn't sleep at all. When I was about 16, I went to homecoming with a bunch of kids, and we had all planned to have a slumber party afterwards. Can't remember where. I was in a town about 20 minutes away from home and had no cell phone. It was around 9:30 p.m. when everyone started to drop off and go home, and eventually I was by myself. I was about a 15-minute walk from a park I knew that had bathrooms which locked. I went there and curled up on the floor, trying to make myself as small as possible in my homecoming dress to keep warm. Some kids came in the middle of the night and yanked and banged on the door. Scared me half to death they would find me in there sleeping. The next morning I woke up and walked to a friend's house where they were all surprised to see me. Nobody commented that I was still wearing my homecoming dress. In hindsight it may have looked like I spent the night with a guy. Prefer that to them knowing I spent the night on a bathroom floor. I've come across a statement about homelessness where it says that no matter what you do, concrete doesn't get warm, so the best thing to do is get cardboard to put underneath you. It's true. I've been homeless several times since, but always had somewhere to go. That was the only time I ever slept outside like a homeless person, and I wasn't even homeless. I'll never forget how afraid I was. I've never told anyone that story before. My parents didn't tell us that they lost their house to the bank. One day we left everything but a few clothes and essentials. I remember sitting in the car watching the world outside, and I felt extremely alone. The drive just endlessly went, unless we had to go to the bathroom. We ate some cracker things and had water at rest stops from bathrooms. Sleeping in a car seat that you couldn't lay back really was hard to adapt to, so I didn't sleep for the first couple nights. It really sucked, but as the days turned into weeks things just became the new normal. We would drive around for hours and sometimes camp out at campgrounds or roadsides instead of sleeping in our woefully tiny car. This completely ruined our education because we couldn't stay at any school long. I loved school for their food and I would steal paper, pens, and books sometimes, so I had something to do. My mother eventually said she would just homeschool us, but that was soon dropped for us kids to do for ourselves. I was able to almost get my JED before a sickness stopped me, but some of my younger siblings only have an education from 3rd or 4th grade. When it was winter, I remember having to take showers from those hand pumps at the campground. The water was so cold it would instantly burn and numb up anything it touched. We also didn't have winter clothes, so most of us would wrap up in our old blankets and layers of clothes. We rarely had any food and I resorted to eating some of my clothes, paper, grass, or tiny pieces of my own skin to try to not feel hungry. Once we had to eat pancakes as our main food for months. I cannot eat pancakes anymore because the very smell of them makes me sick now. Other food we got was ramen and rarely a hot dog. I'm not sure how my parents managed to get the food or have money, even if it was very little. Maybe from a food pantry. Cooking food on the fire wasn't that hard to do, and I learned how to make a fire and gather what a fire needs. If we got sick, we never went to a doctor, just had to hope it got better. We were on and off homeless until I was in my late teens, when my grandmother bought my parents a house for us all to live in. It still feels so strange to actually have a home and even food. I still have a hard time knowing a lot of social norms because of the isolation from homelessness. You just do what you can to survive. I still resent my parents for avoiding any help from the government or going to any homeless shelters. They lost our house because of stupid spending and going into bankruptcy. Their habits never changed. We would get a place to live for maybe a year or two, then lose it because my parents were terrible at managing money. Edit: I'm on mobile, so IDK how to edit my post to look pleasing. Sorry for the wall of text. Edit 2. I think I fixed my text wall. I packed 3 bags, one with clothes, blankets, and a pillow, one with food, and one with books. I couch surfed for a little bit, a week or 2 with each of my friends, slept in my car while I had it. I used other people's kitchens to cook stolen food and ate food that 7 to 11 threw away every morning at about 6 AM. Night shift would throw out all the food that sat too long. I would wait for the clerk to go back inside and then fish the bag out of the dumpster. Slept outdoors in some parks after the car got towed, and I used up my friend's goodwill. Got really good at 5 to 10 minutes wash-ups in public bathrooms with hand soap, teeth, armpits, underboobs, and butt. Let me tell you how nasty hand soap tasted. Would occasionally wash my underwear with hand soap real quick too, and dry it with the hand dryers. I would generally use 2 24-hour McDonald's at about 4 AM so no one would walk in on me. What I would do is I would panhandle outside of a subway station for enough money for a crack rock, an egg of heroin, a needle, and a sandwich and tea. If you wear semi-professional clothes and say OMG, my purse got stolen, does anyone have any spare change? You get more money than just asking AMD wearing, like, jeans. I would then go to the first McDonald's, order the sandwich, and say I had to use the bathroom. Then I would do a wash up, grab the sandwich, and eat it on the way to the next McDonald's. At the second McDonald's, I would order a tea and ask for lemon juice, pocket the juice, and ask to use the restroom. In the restroom I would use the juice to break down the crack, mix it with the heroin, and shoot up. Then, sadly, I would usually actually use the bathroom in a park or something. Did this for years until I accidentally got pregnant. I would be goddamned if I screwed my kid up by being a junkie, so I cold turkeyed everything. I own a house now and will be 14 years clean on November 18th. Edited for clarity and spelling. I didn't really realize what was going on. I was about 6 to 7 at the time. Dad said we were going to go for a drive and to pack my backpack with all the clothes I could fit and one toy. Mom was just crying. Me and my brother sat in the backseat. He was a little older and was holding our Sega Genesis and looking scared. We drove for a little while. It was already getting dark and we parked in front of a Walmart and Dad said he had to rest for a while. Was the first of many nights we slept in the car. I remember one of my parents was always awake with their hand in their coat pocket. Looking back, it was obvious they had a gun for protection. Sleeping in shifts. Edit: Jesus, this blew up and thanks for the gold. Trying to respond to all but my poor inbox. Edit 2. WTF guys 3 gold? Thank you. Thanks for watching. Please like, drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel. Have a great day.